All right, welcome back to the Explainer. Today, we're diving into something pretty big. Google DeepMind's new model, Gemini 3 Flash. Now, it's built on a promise that honestly has always felt kind of impossible in AI, getting that top-tier, pro-level performance, but without the crazy high costs and the slow speeds. So, let's see if they've actually managed to pull it off.
And really, this one quote says it all. For years, we've all lived with this really simple but frustrating trade-off, right? You could have an AI model that was fast and cheap, or you could have one that was actually smart. Google is basically coming out and saying, hey, you can have it all in one package now.
Okay, so let's be clear here. This isn't just your standard incremental update. No, Gemini 3 Flash is being presented as an entirely new class of model, one that is really trying to change the game, especially when it comes to two things that matter most: how much it costs and what it can actually do.
You know, up until now, the choice has always been pretty black and white. On one side, you had your Flash models. They were great for simple, high-speed jobs where you had to watch your budget. On the other side, you had these big, expensive pro models for all the heavy lifting, complex coding, deep reasoning. Well, Gemini 3 Flash is aiming to just completely wipe that line away, giving you the best of both worlds.
Okay, that is a huge claim, right? So let's cut through the hype and actually look at the numbers and see how this thing really stacks up. Now, check this out. This is a coding benchmark. And what you're seeing here is, well, it's kind of nuts. That bar on the far right, Gemini 3 Flash, it's not just beating the last Pro model. It's actually inching past the current Gemini 3 Pro. I mean, that's just unheard of. The supposedly cheaper, faster model is outperforming its smarter big brother on a really complex task. That's a massive shift. And this is where it all clicks into place. You get that incredible pro-level coding skill we just saw, but at a price that is just a tiny fraction of what a real pro model costs. And when we say cost per million tokens, just think of tokens as the little pieces of words these AIs use to think. We're talking about huge savings. Yeah, it's a little pricier than the last Flash model, but for the enormous jump in what it can do, it's a total game changer.
Okay, so the numbers look great on paper, but what does this actually mean for, doing real stuff? Let's see how it handles some practical, complex tasks.
First thing you'll notice, speed. I mean, it is blazing fast. In these head-to-head showdowns on really complex prompts, Gemini 3 Flash is getting the job done in about half the time of the bigger models. We're talking something like 40 seconds versus 90 seconds for its pro sibling. That kind of speed makes a real, tangible difference in your workflow.
But it's not just about raw speed, it's about getting smarter results. And here's the key: you can unlock its real power with better prompting. So instead of just saying, hey, make me a website, you use a multi-step process like this. You're telling it to act like an expert consultant, critique a design, and then build a new site based on its own smart critique. The stuff it comes up with is so much more thoughtful and less like a generic AI made.
But the intelligence here, it goes way beyond just spitting out code or designing a web page. Let's push it with a task that has tripped up pretty much every model out there: complex spatial reasoning. So get this. The task was to arrange a bunch of people to visually spell out a sentence. It sounds simple, but for an AI, it's a nightmare of spatial reasoning. And almost every other model just flat out fails. Gemini 3 Flash not only nailed it, it's one of only 2 models that can do it consistently. But then it did something extra. Without anyone asking, it used Google's brand colors for the people's clothes. That's not just following orders. That's a deeper, almost creative level of understanding.
Okay, as amazing as all that sounds, let's pump the brakes a little. No model is perfect, right? And to really use a tool well, you gotta know where it breaks. You have to understand its limitations.
So where does it stumble? Well, it seems to have this little quirk you could call misguided attention, especially when you throw these tricky, abstract logic puzzles at it.
Here's a perfect example. They gave it a classic logic puzzle, the one about crossing a river, but they changed the rules slightly. The new goal was just to get one thing across. And what's fascinating is that the model sees the change, it even mentions it, but then it just goes ahead and solves the original puzzle anyway, taking everything across. It recognizes the nuance, but it just can't stop itself from defaulting to the classic answer.
So what do we do with this? We have a model that's an absolute coding wizard, but can get sidetracked by a simple logic puzzle. That brings us to the most important part. How do you actually use this thing effectively in your day-to-day work?
Well, the smartest way to think about it is what some are calling the Pro/Flash playbook. And it's not about choosing one over the other. It's about making them work together, playing to each of their unique strengths.
It's actually a really great analogy. Think of Gemini 3 Pro as your architect. It does the high-level, big-picture thinking, the system design, the creative strategy.
Then you hand off those blueprints to Gemini 3 Flash, which acts as your workhorse. It takes those really well-defined plans and just cranks out the code, fast and super cheap.
Okay, for all you developers out there, here's the nitty-gritty. Using the API is super straightforward, but you have to know about this new feature called dynamic thinking. Basically, the model decides for itself how much brainpower to use on a problem. And here's the catch. You can't turn it off completely. That means you have to account for a model that might be doing a little more thinking in the background than you asked it to.
And that really brings us to the big, final question here. Gemini 3 Flash isn't just another tool in the toolbox. It's a fundamental shift. It forces us to ask, if fast and cheap can be this smart, what does it even mean to be pro anymore?